Hey everybody, I just wanted to jump on real quick, let you know, about halfway through this recording, there is two sections where the audio completely drops out. Unfortunately, that's just what we have to deal with sometimes while using Skype. So it's not your radio, it's not your phone, it is the audio itself. It just completely drops off, goes dead silent for about 10 seconds, and then you'll hear it pop back in.
But if there's one lesson that anyone could learn from this, and I try to give teachable lessons, it would be chase your dreams. Like, go for it. Believe in yourself 100% with little regard to the consequences. If you really want to accomplish something, you have to believe in yourself that much. If not, you can't do something half-assed or halfway and expect yourself to attain your dream.
That is Bobby Maximus this week on the Do It For Yourself podcast. Hey everybody, how's it going? I just wanted to say, if you happen to have missed it, Friday I actually launched a new series that I'm starting here on the podcast called Coach's Corner. And I dropped my first interview with a coach whose name is Galen London. And Galen specializes in weight loss and helping people start their weight loss journey, stay on their weight loss journey, and really adopt a healthy lifestyle. And so I got a chance to sit down with him, and we really got a good chance to sit down, dive deep into how to start your weight loss journey and what are some key things that you should be doing to get that weight loss journey going and kind of start the ball rolling down the hill, so to speak. So if you missed that and you didn't realize that I was releasing that, go ahead and check it out. It is available on the same places where you get this podcast that you are listening to. And as I said, when I came up with this idea, this plan, that will not be taking the place of our regular interview style show that I'm doing here on the Do It For Yourself podcast. So that was released Friday. We had an amazing interview released on Monday, and here we are again on Monday with an amazing interview that I am so excited to bring to you. So this week, my guest is Bobby Maximus, and I said at the end of last week's episode, if you're not following him on Instagram, you should definitely go ahead and check him out. He is an awesome dude, and Bobby and I guess I can't say we got introduced, but I was introduced to Bobby through another podcast that I listened to called The Order of Man, and that's with Ryan Mishler. And so I listened to the episode where Ryan had Bobby on, and I think I had listened to it like 2 or 3 times in a row because I just absolutely loved Bobby, and I felt like I was gaining something new every time I listened to it. And as I thought about it a little bit more, I said, you know what? This podcast with Bobby was great, but it doesn't really dive into his story too much. And I would love to know more about his story and kind of where he came from in the background and how he got into this whole fitness thing. So I decided to send him an email. And I sent him an email, and he said, let me see what I have going on. Obviously, he's a very busy guy, so I waited a little while, tried not to pester him too much, and he actually responded again, and he said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's get into this. Let's jump on a Skype call. Let's do the interview. So I was super pumped to jump on this call with him. I said it to him 1,000 times, but I'll say it one more time. I'm just very thankful for the time that he allotted to sit down and field some questions from me and really get into his story a little bit further. So without further ado, I bring you this week's episode with Bobby Maximus. Bobby, like I said, thank you so much for jumping on with me today. I'm really looking forward to digging deep into your story. And, as I said when I reached out, I found you through the Order of Man podcast, and I've listened to that podcast probably at least 2 times since that was released because I just could not stop listening. You have a very amazing way of just telling a story, and I was hooked to that podcast. So I am very, very excited to get connected with you and have you here on the Do It For Yourself podcast.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate your kind words and appreciate you having me on your show.
And we'll get into it later, but one of the things that I picked up from the podcast that you did on Order of Man was your green light therapy or your green dot therapy. And it was immediately that day. I was actually out on the road for work, and I was driving around listening to your podcast, and it just so happened that I had to stop at an office supply store in order to get some things for the office on my way back. And while I was there, I went over to the section where they sold the green stickers, and I bought a pack of like 10,000 of them, and I immediately came home and just stuck them all over everything. They're on my phone. They are just on everything. So we'll get into a little bit more about what that is, but that's a great little tip, and again, I'm just very thankful for that I picked up from you.
Nice. I love hearing that. It's something that's helped me a lot in my life, and it's helped a lot of people I know. So I love that it's still helping people and getting people past their self-imposed limitations.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that I actually want to ask you about that is something that I've noticed on Instagram, and I'm hoping that you could explain in a little bit of further detail, is all these posts about burgers, cheeseburgers, and the Flying Dutchman is what you call it.
Yes.
So could you explain, what the Flying Dutchman is all about and why it's just littered all over your Instagram page?
Okay, so here's the deal. I call myself the big guy. One of my goals my entire life is to be big and strong. I compete at the ultra heavyweight category in Ju-Jitsu, which means I've got to be heavy. It's really hard to maintain a weight or even, to put on weight when you are working out 4 to 5 hours a day. You're busy, you're on the go. And as a 240-pound person, I've got to eat a lot of calories to fill the void. And so I can't do it as clean as I'd like sometimes. That's the reality. I mean, it's great in a perfect world to tell people they should eat chicken breast and broccoli, but you'll never eat 6,000 calories a day on that. You can't, number one, stomach enough food. Number two, you'll fatigue of flavor. And so the Flying Dutchman for me has been a great way to get some meat and some dairy in really quick. It's about 380 calories. There's about 30 grams of protein per Flying Dutchman. If I have 3 of them, which is 6 patties and 6 slices of cheese, I can get 1,000-calorie snack right away. It doesn't leave me feeling bad or bloated. There's no bun, so I don't get any of the negative effects of all the sugar that you would consume from that. And it's a way for me to bump up my calories, feed my muscles some protein. And honestly, it's delicious. So I never really fatigue of that flavor. So it's just a little weight gain trick I use.
And so there's actually something that I want to touch on just right there off the bat that you mentioned. And you're using this as a way to gain muscle, gain weight, because that's what your goal is right now. You're actually on a little bit of it's actually for you, it's probably not little, but you're in a competition at home with your wife, and it's to see, who's going to gain the most weight here. But you are trying to gain, and I know that there are some people, given my background, that have probably come over to this show that might be trying to lose weight. And so the big ticket there that I want people to see is, you are posting these pictures about, having a Flying Dutchman and, eating cheeseburgers, but that is something that is going to support your goals. And someone who is maybe attempting to lose weight, that may not be as beneficial for them.
No, although I will say this, the way that you gain weight and the way that you lose weight really isn't that much different, apart from calories. Obviously, calories play a role in that, but you could look at the Flying Dutchman as a way to lose weight as well. And if I can explain that for a minute, a normal double-double at In-N-Out has about 620 calories. Well, if you get the Flying Dutchman, you can get 380 calories. You can get away with a 380-calorie meal at a fast food place. So it's funny. When you go to an In-N-Out restaurant and you sit there, I'm the person that's fit. I'm the person that's lean. But there's a big difference between me and the other people in that restaurant. The other people there that are overweight are having buns on their burgers, they're eating the fries, and they're having soda with their meal. I'm just a trick I use to get down some calories without junk, that people can use it as a weight loss tool as well. So if you do end up at McDonald's, you do end up at Wendy's, you do end up at In-N-Out or Five Guys, have your burger without the bun. Like just that might help you lose 10 or 20 pounds in a year.
Oh, I mean, I agree with you 100% there. You know, cutting out that bun, cutting out the fries, cutting out the soda, cutting out, you know, the milkshake. Like, you know, if you just pick one or the other, you don't have it all. Like you said, that could really help someone just cut out some calories, you know, even over the course of, even if it's 1-2 meals, you know, a week, that still could be cutting out a tremendous amount of calories.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And it's those little things, and it allows you to enjoy some decent food. I mean, one of the biggest problems I find with people in nutrition is they go so strict and they fill their body with foods that they don't like, that they're bound to break down at some point.
Yeah.
Because it's not maintainable. You know, doing something you hate is just not maintainable.
Well, and I think that that's the problem with, you know, and I, you know, by no means we're not here to bash any sort of diet. You know, if something works for somebody, you know, hey, it may work for you. But, you know, let's say something like a low carb diet, something like the Atkins diet, you know, where you cut out just all these carbohydrates. Well, for a lot of people, that is not something that's easily maintainable for an extended period of time. I mean, let's face it. And so I think that's why so many people, you know, they try the Atkins diet and then they end up rebounding and putting on the weight that they lost and some after that, because it's not something that they can maintain.
No, and I agree with you on that. The best diet, I always tell people the best diet is one that you can maintain. And so I'm not against the keto diet. I'm not against the paleo diet. I'm not against the zone diet, but I'm not necessarily for any of them either. I'm really in favor of whatever you can do. If you're overweight and you're trying to lose weight, whatever you can do to reduce your caloric intake and do it in a way that is, I'll say, over the long term, maintainable and sustainable.
Absolutely.
So if you're a person that loves eating steak and ribs and chicken, and then the carnivore diet might be for you, or a ketogenic lifestyle might be for you.
Yeah.
If you're a person that causes a lot of grief and you're going to break at some point, then I wouldn't necessarily recommend that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So actually, you know, being as we're kind of on the topic of diet and everything, I would like to kind of pivot a little bit into, you know, a little bit of your bio and kind of, you know, what you're up to right now and some of the things that you're up to right now. I know, as you just said, you know, you're competing in the UFC. So that's one of the things that you're into, but you're also, you know, teaching seminars and coaching and some other things. So what are you kind of into currently?
Well, I want to make a correction. I'm not competing in the UFC right now.
Okay.
I'm competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I have a history of fighting in the UFC, along with a bunch of other world-class organizations. Right now, my main focus is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That said, if the UFC called, I would take another fight in a heartbeat. So just to put that out there in case any UFC people are listening.
And that's my ignorance there. I confuse, you know, the UFC and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are two different things, but I am obviously not someone who's well versed in that, so I confuse those two things together.
Oh, and for most people, they're synonymous. I mean, when I tell people I fight, they assume that I fight in the UFC, which is just fine because it's a great thing. It's interesting though, you know, how my life has changed in terms of what I'm doing now. The biggest thing for me right now is focusing on my brand, my training, pushing myself to my limits and seeing what I can do at 40 years old. And part of that encompasses, I guess, that need to fight, or that need to engage in jiu-jitsu, or that need to compete, because I want to see what I still have left in the tank. And frankly, I enjoy the challenge of it. I mean, you can challenge yourself in the weight room, you can challenge yourself lifting weights, but it's different when you're competing and you actually have to put your body on the line a little bit. There's a level of stress, that adds. There's a level of realness that adds, and I think it helps bring out the very best in people.
Not to mention, there is someone who is trying to choke you, so that
Yes,
that probably that probably helps a little bit, right?
exactly.
But I think that it's funny that you mentioned your age and being 40, and you want to see what you still have left in the tank. I come from a triathlon background, and a lot of people, during their quote unquote midlife crisis, have a triathlon on their bucket list, because it's something that they want to use to either get back in shape. They were a swimmer in college, or they were a runner in college, or they have a bike, and they want to see kind of what they can do at this age, and they end up getting hooked. And I think aside from there being that someone trying to choke you in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's not necessarily the case in triathlon, maybe except for in the swim, you can get held under from time to time. But I think that the overall idea of wanting to push your body to the limit and put yourself on the line and see what you're capable of, I think that's an idea that kind of stretches across the two.
Well, and I think that back to the competing part of it, when I say put your body on the line, I don't necessarily mean it to be a combat sport. I think there are many ways you can put your body on the line, but whether it's a marathon, a triathlon, a swim race, a flag football league, like I think there's a certain degree to when you sign up, pay some money for an entrance fee, and commit to something. I call it buying your ticket. It puts pressure on you to train harder, to perform well. The minute that you decide to engage in a triathlon, for example, your friends and your family, they may have expectations as to how you perform, and you're driven and motivated to either meet those expectations or outperform them. You certainly don't want to underperform the expectations. And so I feel that it adds a dimension to training that you just can't replicate when you're quote unquote training for nothing.
Absolutely. And I was talking to a friend who was into triathlon before I got into it, and I said to him, what's the first thing I should do? What should I do to just get started? And he looked at me and he said, sign up for a race. You need to sign up for a race. You need, as you just said, you need to punch your ticket. You need to buy your ticket. You need to buy in to the fact that you are standing here and telling me you want to do this,
Yep. So, exactly.
Prior to getting into, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I know that you did have a career in the UFC, what was your fitness background in, maybe late high school, early college, and through that time? How did you get into this UFC and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
The biggest thing for me was I was bullied fairly heavily as a kid. And it's hard for me to say that at times because I don't want to be the person that sounds like a victim. I think bullying is a very real thing, but I think some people also take it too far, if that makes sense. And what I mean by taking it too far is, listen, everyone's been called a name. Everyone's been picked on. Everyone's been in a situation where they haven't been treated, fairly. But there's a big range in there, and some people really are bullied. I think I was one of them. I was beat up on the bus on a regular basis. I was wedgied, had kids draw in my face with marker. And in grade 9, I was beat up by a couple of hockey bullies, and they broke my collarbone. I call them hockey bullies because it was all the kids that played hockey. I didn't. I got picked on, and they broke my collarbone. Well, I didn't want that to happen anymore. And so I joined the wrestling team. I was terrible my first year, terrible my second year. And then I discovered the weight room, and things began to really change for me. As I got stronger, as I got more confident, as I graduated, I was the guy that got pinned under a 45-pound barbell at one point in my life. As I graduated from the 45-pound barbell to 65 pounds to 85 pounds to 135 pounds, I became more confident. It showed in my sports life. And it's one of the things that I credit with changing my life is just having access to a weight room and a couple of people who cared about me enough at the time to teach me some things. As I got stronger, I got better at wrestling. Confidence improved. I believed in myself more. I started training harder, and I found myself wrestling in university. I was a very good wrestler in university, but I didn't make the Olympic team. That was my goal. I was close, but I didn't make it. And when I got out of wrestling, there was an emptiness there. There was something I wanted to do. I felt unfulfilled. I felt like there was more hard work to do. And I was lucky enough to meet a gentleman named Sean Tompkins, who he's dead now. He died a little bit back, but one of the greatest coaches in MMA history, coached numerous UFC veterans. And he got me into fighting, and my career kind of took off from then. But all along the way, I had this passion for strength and conditioning. So I would always train friends and family members. I actually had a job when I was 20 years old at I call it a Globo gym, but like a big box gym. It's called Good Life Fitness in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a job there as a trainer for a number of years. And so it's something that's always been a big part of my life and has been, I would say the weight room has always been that foundation to my success in every area of life.
Now, can I ask you then, when you were deciding to go to university, why you went down the path of, psychology and English instead of going down the path of something like sports medicine or something over on the fitness side?
That's a good question, and I have no fucking idea how to answer that. To be honest with you, I could try to come up with something right now that I thought that you didn't need sports medicine to be a good trainer, that it wasn't a passion, but frankly, it was a passion. I mean, if I was really honest, and my mom would shake her head if she heard me say this, but I really think I got into psychology and English because it was the easiest classes to take or the most convenient to cater to my wrestling and workout schedule. I mean, I'd like to give you a more mature answer than that I had some master plan that English was going to help me write and psychology would help me delve into the mind of people that I would train and blah, 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 blah. And I think I just kind of fell into it because the class times worked best for my wrestling schedule.
And to tell you the truth, I don't think that would be an uncommon answer if I asked any other collegiate athlete, why it is that they're majoring in what they're majoring in, because most of them are using the academics as an avenue for their sport. And so they pick something that's going to be, as you said, it's going to make sense for their schedule and class load and workload. It needs to be fairly easy compared to what they're doing, because most of the time they're probably doing 2-a-day practices. They got a morning and an evening. There's going to be traveling for matches or games or tournaments. So I don't think it's an uncommon answer.
No, and I'm not going to be a person that tells you getting an English degree is easy. It's certainly not easy, but it's more flexible than a kinesiology program. I mean, you can read a book anywhere.
Right.
So the class hours were lighter. There was a big out of class load, but I could do it anywhere, anytime. So when I was on the team bus going to a tournament, I could read a book.
Mm-hmm.
When I was home at night, I could read a book. When I was waiting for practice, I could read a book. With kinesiology or sports medicine, there were always labs that you had to attend. There was always classes you had to attend. There was always these other things that you needed to attend. And so it kind of got in the way. But I do remember thinking, because my memory gets jogged a little bit as I talk about it, also wanting to keep my options open because I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. I kind of always wanted to be a police officer. I'd wanted to be a teacher at points. Thought I might have wanted to go in business school at one point. And so getting a double major in psychology and English left the door open for all those things, if it makes sense. So it also was the most versatile in terms of my future when I really didn't know what I wanted to do.
And so I would have to imagine that being so close to making the Olympic team and not, especially for somebody who's, so ultra competitive, that was probably a tough pill to swallow. And were there any dark points when you got that news for you? Did you, go down a dark path, or did you look at this as a way to transition and pivot and grow into something else?
More, I would say the second, but with a little bit of the first option in it as well. I always worked hard, but I didn't have the fire inside that I did now. I kind of always took my athleticism, I guess, for granted. Don't get me wrong. I worked really, really hard, but I didn't do every single thing that I should have to be better. And I didn't realize that till it was too late, if that makes sense. So I'd be the first person to practice, the last person to leave. I'd work hard, I'd grind, I'd sweat, I'd work through injuries, but I wouldn't do things like watch videotape on my opponents. I wouldn't study. I wouldn't work on technique as much as I should have. And I thought at the time I worked harder than anybody. And you could make the argument that I did, but I didn't work the right way, and I didn't work hard enough at the things that I didn't like and the things that would have helped me be better. And by the time I realized that, it was too late. And that's what really set the table for the second half of my career. When I realized that, it was a bit of a dark moment. I was a little depressed, upset, felt let down, but there was a quick turnaround to using that as a learning lesson and then getting into the world of fighting, in which I used the lesson I'd learned to have a very good career. And I don't know if I wouldn't have learned that lesson if I would have been who I was in the fighting world.
And that was actually going to be my next question, was that did you take those things that you learned from from wrestling and then apply those to when you got into your MMA fighting, and your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to kind of take your career to that next step?
Oh, enormously. And I think it's something that's helped me teach as well. Because the reality, Ian, is you can work hard, but I think we all, and I have this phrase that I use that's called hiding in the hard work, that you're doing a podcast. You love doing podcasts. You work hard at it. You're willing to contact people to get interviews. You're willing to talk to them for hours a day. You're willing to do all kinds of other things, but you're not willing to do the behind the scenes editing to make your podcast really great. I'm not saying that's you, just using that as an example.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, no one can say you're not working hard. No one can say you're not putting in 6 hours a day to do your thing, but you're not doing the stuff that should really help you because you're actively choosing to stay away from the things that you don't like. And I think we all do this in life with the gym. I think we work on the things that we like and the things that we're good at versus working on our weaknesses when our weaknesses might pay more dividends.
Absolutely. And actually, as part of your example, I would tend to agree with you on that when you're talking about me in the podcast, because I don't like to be the person who is bothering people. So if I send someone an email, and maybe I don't hear back from them, or they say, oh, contact me here. It's mostly when I don't hear back from them. I hate sending that second and third email. But I know that about myself, and I try to, just send the email until they say no, kind of deal.
Well, but it's also what you have to do to get better.
Right.
Like that's the reality. And what a lot of people do, they only work on the stuff they enjoy. And that's a recipe for failure long-term. And like I said, they hide in the hard work, because if you're the person showing up to the gym 4 hours a day, or putting in 4 hours a day on your podcast, or putting in 4 hours a day, and whatever you're putting time into, no one can say you're not working hard, but you're not doing the right things.
And you do see that a lot in endurance sports as well, and triathlon. Someone who enjoys riding their bike and loves riding their bike, they have no problem going out and riding their bike. But when they see that swim workout in their schedule, they're definitely more likely to skip that one, because it's their weakness, and they don't want to do it. But they post about their 4-hour bike ride, and people are like, oh, well, they're out there training.
How are you going to tell that person they're not working hard enough?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry. It sounded like we cut out for a minute. This is one of the joys of technology that you have to deal with.
I know. But yeah, so I was just saying that, and I think that you touched on it as well, that, it's people who are going out and, riding their bike for 4 hours or whatever it is that they may be doing, but they're skipping that swim workout. Nobody can say that they're not working hard, because, they're doing 4-hour bike rides or, 2-hour runs.
Or they're putting in 16 hours a week. What are you going to do? Tell a person that's working out 16 hours a week that they're lazy?
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't work like that. But they might be lazy in a way because they're avoiding the work they should really do.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to kind of transition a little bit and ask you about, your your career as a police officer, and I want to know how that transition happened from MMA and jiu-jitsu into being a police officer. And I'm sure that there's definitely some things that you used that you learned from MMA as a police officer, because you were a defense tactics instructor and everything like that. So how did that transition happen?
It kind of time, to be honest with you. So I never really, how do I word this? One of the biggest problems I had in my fight career was self-imposed limitations. And I never really had the outright belief in myself that I would make it as a professional fighter. I never believed that I was going to be the best in the world. And I never believed I really belonged there. I almost just found myself in the UFC. And so that's one of the things that always really, really held me back. And looking back on it, I wish I would have had the courage to not have a police job, to not get into teaching, to not try to make it in the quote unquote real world and just put all my eggs in the fighting basket. But like I said, I had doubt and I never believed in myself. If I would have done that, I think my career would have ended up differently and a lot better than it did. And so there was always this need when I got out of college. Fighting's great. I'm dedicated. I'll work hard on it, but I never really believed in myself enough to make it. So I always thought I needed a real career or a real job. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sure in the podcasting world or the entertainment world, it's kind of the same thing. Like, do you believe? For my real work, and in ways it supported me because I made enough money to support my habit, if you will, or my sport. But at the same time, it held me back because it's really difficult to be world class at something when you're dedicating all your time to another endeavor.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be tough to try and make it full time as a fighter. When you also have something else going on, and you're thinking about something else as well, or vice versa. If you're working as a police officer, but you want to, be a fighter, it's probably hard to dedicate yourself fully to being a police officer or, fully to being a fighter. It's almost like you have to pick one or the other.
Yeah, and that was one of those lessons that I learned too late as well. I wish I would have had the belief in myself before I even got the UFC to quit being a police officer and just go for it full time.
And so you actually did end up quitting being a police officer, and going for something full time. Although it was a few years later, and that's when you started working at Jim Jones. So you've always had this passion for fitness, and as we said earlier, when you went to university, you didn't necessarily pursue a career in fitness. How did this career in fitness end up popping up for you to make this transition?
And I want to clarify something too. It's actually funny that eventually I did leave my policing job, but for another full-time job, right? Like, it's not like I left my policing job at that point to pursue fighting full time. I pursued another career again because I felt like I needed a backup. I felt like I needed a real world gig. And the job at Jim Jones turned out to be a real world gig. I mean, there was a lot of hours put into that job. There was a lot of hours building up that business. There was a lot of effort that went into it that took away from fighting. And I'm not saying I regret any decision I make. But if there's one lesson that anyone could learn from this, and I try to give teachable lessons, it would be chase your dreams. Like, go for it. Believe in yourself 100% with little regard to the consequences. If you really want to accomplish something, you have to believe in yourself that much. If not, you can't do something half-assed or halfway and expect yourself to attain your dream. Now, with the gym, how that came about is I met the owner of the gym in Toronto. She was working on a movie there. She had an assistant who was working on the movie with her who was into Brazilian Ju-Jitsu, who was looking for a place to train. We knew a mutual friend. We started to train together. And then because I would say of a unique skill set, I mean, Jim Jones at the time was very small. It was a small little, 2,000 square foot facility. It wasn't a business at all. And I was hired because of my background in policing and paramilitary training, because of my UFC background, and because of my educational background to run the business. Because I'm different than most normal trainers. I don't just have a degree in sports medicine or kinesiology. I'm good at business. I'm really good at writing content. I'm really good at branding and marketing. Really good at psychology, good at sales. And I've had some sales jobs in my past. And so I was able to use all that to turn Jim Jones from what I call an underground backroom project to a certified business, if you will, with a full certification program, seminar program, and everything you need to be a world respected entity.
So do you think that in this world of, and again, I'm not here to bash anybody, so, take it with a grain of salt, but in this world of, you could become a CrossFit level 1 instructor, in the course of, a weekend or whatever it may be, and everybody looking at credentials, quote unquote, oh, I'm a certified this coach, I'm a certified that coach. Do you think that your degree in psychology and in English actually helped you more when it comes to training clients than maybe a weekend class? Because with your degree in psychology, you can really dive into kind of what's going on in someone's head and why they can't lose weight or, whatever their goals may be. And do you also think that then on the flip side, the English helped not only obviously when communicating with your clients, but also, in the seminars and writing content?
I think it helped in a couple of ways. So the first way is, for the most part, a lot of the stuff you learn in a sports medicine degree or a kinesiology degree, the people you train on a day-to-day basis don't need that much knowledge. I mean, I think teaching people to lose weight, teaching people to get stronger, teaching people to be the best version of themselves, it's not that difficult. I mean, do some squats, do some push-ups, do some rowing, do some running, push yourself beyond your limits. I mean, if you've got a triathlon background, there's a difference training somebody to finish a marathon versus training somebody to run a 2-hour and 15-minute marathon. Those things are worlds apart. Mm-hmm. Well, most of the people you train are only ever going to be training to finish a marathon or maybe run a 3:30 or a 3:15. You're probably not going to be training that person that's trying to run a sub-2. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think in that way, I think the education of having a sports medicine degree can be very helpful, but you might only deal with 1 out of 99 knowledge. For most people, the average person, you're better off being a leader and a coach versus a highly certified trainer. And I think that in that way, the psychology and English degree helped. The other place it helped was, let's face it, being a trainer isn't just about putting people through workouts. It's about being a business. You have to learn how to write copy. You have to know how to do photography. You have to be able to craft a good image. You have to be able to do things like marketing and branding. I even look at areas in my life when Men's Health wants me to write for them. It helps to have an English degree, because there's a lot of trainers out there who may have more knowledge than me, who may know more than me, but they can't put their stuff on paper and they can't sell themselves. And so I think in those ways, the psychology and English has helped with the business of being a trainer as well, besides just being a good trainer.
And so what were some of the things that you were doing while you were at Jim Jones, as a seminar instructor? What were some of the seminars you were teaching? Were they, just on weight loss? Were they on building strength? What were some of the things that you were doing at Jim Jones specifically?
No, and I had a dual role. I developed the seminar and certification program. So behind the scenes, the planning, determining the cost, the marketing, the branding behind it, the formulation of the book, all that kind of stuff. And so it was constructing that from the ground up, and then also as a lead seminar instructor, because I was doing both. And so there was the business side behind the scenes, which was most of my work. And then there was the public teaching side, which was a lot of work as well, but I wasn't teaching seminars every day. And the seminars were mostly on general fitness, strength, endurance, learning how to teach others the psychology of training. So there's a huge sports psychology component there that I wanted because of my background in psychology and sports psychology. And so developing those things.
Okay. Now, where did you gain the experience on developing the programs, especially on the side of, the finances and what to charge and that whole structure of it?
All, mostly self-taught and experience being in other business realms, and so research, talking to people, reading, consulting with people who I knew in my past, some of my UFC career and dealing with managers and agents and seeing how other athletes did stuff helped me. Dealing with trainers in the past from an athlete perspective. So all of these things helped formulate that.
So that was, you were really kind of utilizing your network from all the way back into your UFC days. And I guess that speaks to, not burning bridges and really keeping in touch with people, because you never know when you may need to reach out to them and say, hey, can you help me with something?
Well, no, for sure. And even my career at Good Life, like I was fortunate enough. Good Life is the biggest, what I'll call big box gym company in Canada. They are well over 100 locations. It's the premier gym in Canada. And I was lucky enough to work at their head office gym.
Okay.
So I knew the vice president of the company. I knew the president of the company. I knew a bunch of upper level managers. I knew the person that developed their group fitness models. So by being involved in that world and having that job before, I also had access to some of the brightest minds in the industry to run stuff by.
And now, aside from these skills and experiences that you had, as far as building the program and really building up the business side, was there anything that you gained from that experience that you could then use when you were looking at building the Maximus family of companies?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, everything that I've done has sat on something else. So if you look at where I am right now in the Maximus gym and my wife Lisa Maximus and the Bobby Maximus brand, all of that was built using lessons I've learned for the past 20 years.
Right.
And so it's funny how like everything builds on something else. And maybe there's certain things I can say that were more important than the others. But if my life wouldn't have unfolded in a certain trajectory, none of this would be here today.
Right. And can you just explain where the name Bobby Maximus comes from, since we're talking about, the Maximus brand and everything? Because obviously Bobby Maximus isn't your real name, but it is the name that you go by, and it's the brand that you've built.
Yeah, and it's funny. I wish I had some, again, glitzy answer to give you, that I had some forethought that it would be a great brand name and all this stuff. The reality is, when I was in university, I got the nickname Maximus. It started out, people used to call me PB, peanut butter, because I used to eat a jar of peanut butter a day because I was on the heavy mass game program then. And there was this guy named Scott Proctor, who was our wrestling captain and a very dear friend, who started calling me PB Maximus because I was big. Well, the PB got dropped, and eventually it was just Maximus. Well, my name was also Robert, which is, I think, the most boring name in the world, and a lot of people called me Bobby. So Bobby Maximus just became my name at some point.
Okay.
This stretches back to, probably 1999, 2000-ish would be when I started using that name. And it's funny because, it's a powerful name. It's unique. And you'd think that there was some vision behind it. Like, I watched the movie Gladiator and I was inspired, and it's this Roman legion name and blah, blah, blah. Nope. It was just the simple fact that guys on the wrestling team started calling me Maximus. My first name was Robert. Therefore, it became Bobby Maximus. And that was the end of the story. Funny enough, though, it's really worked for me, because if you go to Google Bobby Maximus, one person comes up, and that's me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If you Google my government name of Robert McDonald, you get 9 million hits.
Absolutely.
So it's actually worked to set me apart from the crowd as well. And it's a name that kind of came about organically. Like now that I think about the story, it's kind of funny that there was no marketing push behind it. There was no branding push behind it. It was just first name Robert, guys on the wrestling team called me Maximus. So people started calling me Bobby Maximus.
And there it was born.
Yeah. And it's funny with names too, because it's interesting. Like if you were to approach me now on the street and call me Bobby, I don't think you know me from Instagram or Men's Health. My mind goes back to when I was in second year and third year university, to when friends used to call me Bobby, or ex-girlfriends used to call me Bobby, or people in my class used to call me Bobby. Like I go right back to that place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't always look at myself as Bobby Maximus. So when people call me Bobby, I'm like, wow, this has got to be someone that knows me from second or third year university. And then I realized, no. This is like the name I go by now. People could know me from the internet world.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
And now I do have a question, because I know that there were two stories that you mentioned on the Order of Man podcast, and both of them involve your son Beans. And
Yep.
one of the stories that you told on that podcast was Beans asked you why you weren't training on Sundays, and he just couldn't understand why you weren't training on Sundays, right?
Yeah.
And the other story was you told that he was, writing down a list of ways to get strong. And he was writing down things that, could make him strong. And he had like steak and broccoli and this whole big list of things. But you never taught him about any of that. So what do you think he picks up on as a younger kid that kind of ingrains these ideas into his head, since you're not specifically teaching him, hey, Beans, if you want to get strong, you got to work every day. If you want to get strong, you need to eat steak and broccoli and these things. So what do you think he picks up on?
Well, the funny thing is God forgot to give that kid a chill button. He has zero chill. Like anything he does, he's full on into it. So God bless his little heart. He's a good little boy. So like genetically, I think he's just a hard worker. I think there's something, and whether that's nature, nurture, a genetic thing, how I brought him up, the kid just works hard and does the right thing all the time. My wife says it, his stepmom. It's funny. He's not selfish. He's helpful. He doesn't talk back. I mean, he's the perfect kid. And I'm not saying that because I'm his dad. Like our biggest complaint is he might be a little too sensitive at times. That's the biggest complaint we have as parents. He's got straight A's in school. He's well liked. He's helpful. He loves his baby brother. I mean, he's the perfect kid. So that's a component. But the second component is he's been raised in this lifestyle since the day he was born. I mean, I have numerous pictures of him in his diaper at the gym because he was always with me. So we taught seminars together. He's been to more seminars than anyone I know on the planet. He's probably been to 50 fitness seminars, that kid, maybe 100. So he's always picked this stuff up, and it's always been part of his life. So he hears me teach people it, and kids are really influenced by teachers, so it must be the truth. So he believes this stuff. So every lesson that I teach in a seminar, he understands. He's read my book cover to cover. He preaches this to his friends. So it's just a product of this is a life he's been living. It's the only life he's ever known.
So he's a product of his environment then.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there is a genetic component to it because you can have kids in the best environment that turn out rotten.
Right.
And you can have kids in the worst environment that turn out great. So there is a genetic component to it, but there's a wiring component there, but he's also been raised in this environment from day one.
Yeah, I absolutely. And to your point, I mean, you see things like that every day. Like you see, singers, songwriters, guys in the NBA, girls over in, their sports, who have come from just the bottom of the bottom. And then you see people who, I mean, God, let's look at Justin Bieber. He had like everything, and started acting like an idiot. So there's people on both sides, that could go, it can absolutely go either way.
Yep. That's for sure.
Now, I do just want to, I want you to, if you could, do me a favor, because I know we touched on it earlier. I would really like you to explain the green dot therapy and the the way that you use it, and that's the same exact way that I use it for the listeners, because we mentioned it earlier. And I implemented it, like I said, about probably a month or so ago now, when that podcast came out from Order of Man. And it has helped me tremendously with maintaining a positive attitude.
Yeah, so here's the deal. We're all plagued with what I call red light thoughts. Red light thoughts are voices of negativity. We're plagued with voices of self-doubt. We're plagued by the voices that say you can't do it, you'll fail. We're plagued by examples in the real world of people that have fallen flat on their face, and this stuff embeds itself in our consciousness, and it's really hard to overcome this stuff without conscious practice. So green dot therapy or green light therapy or green thought therapy is a way to overcome these negative examples that have essentially sown their seeds in our consciousness. What you do is you go to Office Depot or Home Depot or online. I actually sell them on my website now. You get these green dots and you place them various places in your house. It could be on your computer, your fridge, your stove, your phone, your TV, doesn't matter. Every time you see one of these green dots, you think a positive thought. And what you're trying to do, and it's a psychology technique, is you're trying to overwrite negative thought patterns with positive thought patterns. And it's very hard to devote 2 hours a day to this, to devote 3 hours a day to this, to sit down and practice this for 2 hours. But if you just look at green dots all day, and every time you see a green dot, you think a positive thought, over time, you start to rewire the circuit in your brain to teach yourself to believe in yourself and be positive, so that when you have a moment of self-doubt, when you have a moment of stress and those red light thoughts start to percolate in your brain, you practice green light thoughts and you can shut them down immediately, and that helps propel you to success.
And it not only does it help you with success, but it helps with your overall well-being, and it helps you maintain such a positive outlook and just a positive way about you, even in your everyday life. I mean, like I said, when I sent you an email the first time, even if we weren't able to connect to do the podcast, I at least wanted to connect to say thank you for sharing that, because it has helped me so much. So if you are someone who, like Bobby said, is plagued with these red light thoughts and these I can't do it, go out and get yourself a pack of these green dots and stick them all over everything, and your positive thoughts can be just, so simple. Like, you could wake up and, your phone's right there next to your bed. You wake up, you see your green dot, and oh my God, I woke up today, or I'm going to have a great day today. Whatever it may be, it's something that's so simple, but I promise you it really, really helps.
No, and it can help in any area of your life. It can help in your relationship. It can help with school. I mean, my little son Beanie has green dots all over his room that he looks at to help him with tests and physical tests that he gets at school and things that he's not confident with. So it's something that I think any person of any age or any background or in any given field can use to help themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I do just want to ask you one more question, because there are a lot of people who listen to this podcast who obviously are into fitness and health and everything else. And I've noticed that you've been posting quite a bit on social media recently about some sauna therapy and some cold therapy that you've been doing. So, can you talk to me a little bit about this this hot and cold therapy that you're doing, and why it is that you're putting such a focus on your recovery right now?
Yeah, funny enough, guess where I am right now?
In the sauna.
In the sauna. So that's amusing, but I spend a lot of time in here a day, probably 30 to 90 minutes, depending on the day. As much as I can, I'm in the sauna. And the hot cold therapy, without boring you with all the science behind it, basically it helps increase all your good chemicals, your testosterone, your human growth hormone. It helps you deal with stress. It helps your muscles grow and regenerate faster. There's an overall tonic effect that happens to it. It helps heal your CNS. So there's a bunch of stuff that happens across the board. Now, the cold therapy does the same kind of stuff, coincidentally. What I tell people is hot works well, cold works well, hot and cold together. that's the secret that everybody's looking for, because it multiplies the effects of both. So it's something that, I mean, it's relatively free. All it's costing me right now is time. It's relatively easy to do. I mean, sitting in a sauna isn't that difficult to do. If you're smart like me, or not smart, but if you're savvy like me, you can kill two birds with the same stone. So I'm doing this podcast from the sauna. I do a lot of my work from a cold bath, because I don't necessarily in my business life have time to just take an hour and a half a day to chill. But by doing my podcasts from the sauna and doing my Instagram work from the sauna and my emails from the sauna and work from the sauna or the cold bath, it allows me to maximize my recovery time. And what this allows me to do at 40 years old is put in the volume of 20-year-old.
Right.
Now, it's funny. If I miss days in the sauna, or I miss getting 8 hours or 9 hours of sleep a night, or I miss doing my cold therapy, my body feels it immediately. This is what I have to do to perform at my level. And everyone, it's great that you want to go train. It's great that you want to do the fun stuff. But this is the type of work that really pays dividends.
And I will say that as much as I hate doing it, I don't have a sauna at home, and I am not at the point right now where I could put a sauna in at home. I do have a sauna at my gym, so I could go there to use that, but I do a majority of my training at home, and so it would be convenient, I should say, to be able to do, finish up training and maybe go to the sauna.
So before you continue on, I have two solutions for you.
Sure.
One, you can buy a prefab sauna from Costco for about $2,300 these days, which I'm not saying it's an inconsequential amount of money. I'm not saying everybody has $2,300 to blow on a sauna, but those same people that say they don't have money for that have money for a fancy new microphone, have money for booze, have money for vacation, have money to go out and eat.
Right.
So what I tell people is, I used to look at saunas as like the rich man's thing, but they've come down in price where you can buy a really good steam sauna from Costco for about $2,300. So it's probably more affordable than you think. The second option is, rather than having a sauna, have a contrast shower, which is a series of hot and cold temperatures at home, which not as good as the sauna and the ice tub, because the hotter you can make the hot and the colder you can make the cold, the better. But it's still far better than doing nothing, and will still have a remarkable effect on your recovery.
Absolutely. And so actually it's funny because it's not $2,300 is a lot for me, but it's more of a spatial thing for me. I wouldn't really have anywhere to put that because I don't have a basement. And my office / podcast room / training room is all encompassed in one. But to what you were saying with the hot and cold, the way that I start my day is I get in the shower first prior to turning on the water. I turn the water on to the temperature that I want it at. Obviously, it starts off cold. It's not going to start off at the temperature that you want it at. So it starts cold. I get in, do my shower thing. The temperature comes up. And then just as I'm about to get out, I reach down and I turn the hot knob all the way off and I turn the cold knob all the way on. And let me tell you, and I'm sure actually I don't have to tell you because you're in Salt Lake, you're in Utah. It's cold there too. Right now, it's really hard to reach down and turn that cold knob on, when it's 18 degrees outside. But the benefits.
I agree. Although the more you see a benefit from it, the easier that gets.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's funny, the people that haven't done it before, they have such a difficult time. But when you realize how good it makes you feel, it's easy. Now, the other thing, I want to address your space comment. I would put this thing in my living room if I could.
Okay.
Like the footprint of a lot of these days, especially the one from Costco's, are like 6 feet wide by like 3 feet deep. They're not that big.
Okay.
4 feet deep. So you could actually put it against the wall in your dining room. The funny thing is, I guess it depends on like what you value is what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, it's funny now that me and my wife are in a sauna every day. If the only place, if we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, we would put a sauna in the living room. Why not?
Yeah.
So they are smaller. They take up less of a footprint that you would think. They sit against the wall. They don't require ventilation. So you could probably find enough space for it, like along your bedroom wall or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
it's funny, like people, they want to let it hold them back, but it's really not that much of a footprint. I mean, it's not much different than like an overgrown shelf.
Okay. Interesting.
So, I mean, mine at home is essentially in a closet.
Okay.
And you don't have to get a 9-person sauna. You get
right.
2 or 3-person sauna.
Right.
Which could be like a single seater. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the other thing that I was looking at is there is a way to do the infrared sauna at home with like some infrared lamps and like you can set it up that way, which would also help as well. You're still getting that heat therapy, and that's easy enough that you could set up like in a closet or something like that, which is also an option.
I mean, all a sauna is some cedar planks, an oven, and a tile floor. You could almost build one anywhere.
Yeah.
But like I said, Costco's got these prefab ones that are about $2,200 that you get the 4 walls, the roof, and the floor. You put it together. You have an electrician run an electricity line into it, and you're done.
Okay.
So it's something that I had a couple of friends that just bought one, and they have the same thing. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment. We don't have room for this. We don't. Well, get rid of your third couch you never sit on. Get rid of the TV. Get rid of those shelves that you don't use. Put it along your dining room wall. And then it's funny, they say, well, what happens if we have people over? I'm like, when's the last time you had company over? Well, we never have company over because we live in a 2-bedroom apartment. So what's stopping you?
You just answered the question yourself,
Like, and I really think it's people don't understand how valuable it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I agree 100%. And that goes back to everything that we've said, on the podcast today, even, as far back as hiring a trainer or, oh, it's too expensive to eat healthy or, it's an excuse is what it is.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So,
or not even an excuse. Before we go, I'll say this. It's again, people don't understand the value behind it. Like if I could make you feel how good it feels to be in here every day, you would go buy a sauna now.
Right.
But I don't think you have an understanding of how good it feels. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's a common thing because I used to tell people they didn't want it, but that insults people. The reality is people don't understand the value.
Yep. I agree. I mean, I agree 100%.
Yeah. I mean, if you lived with me for a month, you would leave and you would go buy a sauna because you'd be like, holy shit, like I feel different than I've ever felt. It'd be easy for you to do at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Bobby. Well, I will let you get back to your sauna. But I do, like I said at the beginning, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to jump on the call with me here today. I really enjoyed this time, and I really enjoyed, getting a chance to learn a little bit more about your story and having you share it with the listeners of this podcast. So thank you.
No, thank you very much for having me on. I'm always, I don't have time for a lot of these things anymore. And that makes me sad because my favorite thing to do is connect with people. And I always have to multitask and do other things. But one of the things I'm always honored when somebody thinks highly enough of what I do or my message to have me on. So thank you for that. I'm very grateful that you think highly enough to spend part of your day with me.
Yeah, for sure. What did you think of that? I am just amazed at Bobby's energy. Fitness and helping people and, growing his brand is just something that he is very, very passionate about. So it obviously makes sense that he would come on the podcast, to help kind of grow his brand. But I think that just the passion that he has for everything surrounding fitness and just being an overall better person is absolutely amazing. And, that was one of the things that I really, really enjoyed hearing about when he was on the Order of Man podcast. But I also really enjoyed getting a chance to dive into his story a little bit more and learning that he was not even based in fitness, or really business when he was going through college, and he picked his course load based on scheduling, which I think is something very common, as I said in the interview, but it's not something that I would have guessed for him, being as he is so driven. So I thought that was really, really interesting, but I do think that it also helped him, and it helped him grow his business, and it's continuing to help him grow his business that he is doing right now with everything the Maximus family of companies is trying to do. So if you get a chance, go head over to social media. Instagram is definitely the best place to find him. Let him know what you thought about this interview. Let him know that you heard him here on the Do It For Yourself podcast, and you really enjoyed him sharing his story here. And as you're thinking about it, if you could do me a huge favor and leave an iTunes, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, wherever you are, leave a little bit of a review and a star rating if that is available. I would greatly appreciate that, and it's, like I said, it's only going to help the show. So if you could take a minute to do that, that would be awesome. And until next week, I hope that you all have a fantastic week.